The Hog Sty is brought to you by TicketClub.com, your one-stop shop for live events nationwide. Whether you're looking for game, theater, or live performance tickets, don't sweat it. TicketClub.com has you covered. So make sure you're going there for all your live entertainment needs, and make sure you're clicking over to them from the banner at the top of the hogsty.com.
Welcome back to the Hog Sty, now part of Big Heads Media. We are DC's unofficial leading source for all things Redskins and your number one destination for the 2019 season, which begins on Sunday for Washington. Boy, am I excited for some actual football after an offseason in the doldrums. I am Sean Conti. I've got Jamal Forrest, Steve Thomas, and Alex Zeese here with me today. How the heck are you guys doing?
I want to someday become the official source for Redskins news. That's my goal for this show. We've been the unofficial source for 4 years now, 5 years now.
Yeah, 5.
Well,
exactly.
I think to do that, Steve, we would need to somehow get rid of Larry Michael and replace him.
Wouldn't you be leading that charge, though, Alex?
Yeah, in some ways, but
Hey, he's a Hall of Fame voter now. We need him.
That's true.
Oh,
well, I mean, if we became the official source, wouldn't we be the Hall of Fame voter?
Yeah, Jamal, believe it or not, Larry Michael is the Redskins Hall of Fame voter now. Unbelievable.
Right.
He loosely qualifies as a journalist. He's probably a member of the Pro Football Writers Association. Obviously he is, even though he's not really a journalist. So he's the vote. I just can't believe they take him seriously.
That just makes
even though he works for the team.
I say that just makes me want to dig into his background. Like I don't know. All I know about the Redskins. What is it? The spokesperson, Redskins spokesperson. So I got to look into his background a little bit more.
Yeah, he's basically the vice president of communications, is what he is.
Right. He's on the team's website in such a
not
way.
Basically, he is the vice president of communications.
Right. Mm-hmm. And to think, 20 years ago he was hawking light bulbs in radio ads.
Was he really?
Yeah. Yeah. That's he when he worked for 106.7. Back before Snyder owned the Redskins and they did the games, he was doing radio ads and he produced their pregame show.
You know what? Who cares about Larry Michael? We have actual football to talk about. Screw Larry Michael. Let's get to the Eagles.
Right. But
not in a bad way, Larry, if you're listening. Not screw you in a bad way.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, we got to preserve ourselves. Let's move past Larry Michael. Let's get to football.
Yep, yes, sir.
Right.
Yeah. Well, let's do it. Speaking of football, then, Steve, before we talk about the Eagles game, which is coming up, obviously that's front and center in everyone's minds, let's talk about any changes that are going on with the roster in the last few days.
Yeah, I mean, we're going back a few days here, but we hadn't done a show since roster cuts
took a
happened.
10-day break. Sorry, folks.
Yeah, we did. Sorry. It was our one free weekend of the year, basically. But the big picture roster cuts, which I think we need to talk about, obviously Josh Doctson's gone. Byron Marshall's gone. Eric Flowers.
That one was unexpected.
Eric Flowers is still here. That which upset some people. Beyond that, I think it was probably, more or less what we expected. Cam Sims is gone. He's on the practice squad, but frankly, with the preseason game 4 he had, he probably deserved it. And I guess the other thing I like to point out is they did not keep a quarterback on the practice squad. So we have 2 healthy quarterbacks currently, Case Keenum and Dwayne Haskins. I kind of thought Jalen McClendon might make the practice squad, but he didn't.
He didn't play very well, so I don't know. I wouldn't have. It's not a great loss in my mind. He'll be available. Hopefully we don't need him.
Hopefully not. But that's basically rosters in a nutshell. I don't know if you guys had any big picture thoughts that
the big surprise from that 4th game was Steven Sims really coming in and just kind of wowing everybody. He played his way onto the roster in that 4th game with a couple great kick returns, touchdown catch that Steve, you did a great breakdown of on our website today. So
today being Wednesday, what Alex is talking about is I decided to go back and watch all of Dwayne Haskins' preseason film, and I didn't want to do a big 3,500 word analysis of it.
You did.
No, it wasn't nearly that long. It was only about 1,800 words. So, but there were just a few things I wanted to point out with this game.
Right.
And I don't want to get into it here necessarily, but he's got to clean up his mechanics to be more consistent. That's the gist of it. But the Steven Sims play was on there.
Yeah.
All right, cool. We'll make sure everybody goes to the website and checks that out then. Any update or movement on the injury side of things, Steve?
Yeah, okay, so we're into the regular injury reporting now, which means the team has to actually give injury reports. And so we have Wednesdays. We're recording this Wednesday night. Injuries, Colt McCoy, DNP, Fabian Moreau, DNP because of his ankle. Caleb Brantley, his foot limited. Casanova McKenzie and Jordan Reed are both in concussion protocol. And I'll explain what that is just here in a second. Sean Dean Hamilton and Paul Richardson, chest. There's not the Eagles had 7 folks on their injury list too. Nobody really of note. What is of note is that Fletcher Cox is not on this list, despite him being injured. Yeah, he's not on here. And Jason Kelsey is on here, but it's just a rest day, so he's not really injured. And Sean's ex-boyfriend Nate Sudfeld has a wrist, and he didn't play, didn't practice.
He still has it, though.
Yeah. So that's injuries in a nutshell. Concussion protocol. So the concussion protocol basically is you have to get cleared by a doctor to practice, and then you practice a day, and then you see how your symptoms are, and then you have to get cleared again to actually play in a game. And so that may or may not happen depending on whether McKenzie and Reed pass the test. So we're halfway through with those 2 guys.
So we got 4 days.
So they've both been cleared by the doctor then?
Well, you have to get cleared twice. You have to get back on the practice field.
But they've gotten the first clear. That's
they got through the first hurdle, but they could practice and have symptoms, and it could go on and on. So
Gotcha.
All right, cool. Well, we will keep our eyes on that then. Any thoughts you guys want to give? I mean, this is a momentous moment every year for the Hog Sty. We're doing our first preview. We're switching schedules. I mean, any last thoughts you guys want to say about the off season going into this?
I mean, this is our 5th season that we're going into. I want to say that's. I did not expect us to be surviving this long. So go us for that.
I thought we'd have 10 people listen for a few shows, and that would be it. I had no idea it was going to become what it's become. So, thanks to everybody for that.
Yeah, I want to thank people who read our blogs. I want to thank guys like Rick Snyder who somehow are like, hey, can I help you guys out?
Rest in peace to Rich Tandler from the early days.
Yeah, that's sad. And, all the litany of co-hosts we've had buried along the way.
Well, I'd like to thank Jamal, by the way. Because Jamal came in here, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and we lost a couple people. And Jamal, you've really stepped in and done a great job for us. And you bring something to the table that, with your analysis of football, that none of the rest of us do. So I personally like to thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. I think you guys I appreciate you all because I still remember initially how it all set up. I mean, it's 3 years now. I still remember who was the guy? I think it was Tarasky.
Adam.
Adam. Because of what was going on, I believe I didn't even make the cut initially on the radio host or the 4th radio guy. But things work out in our favor. Not in a bad way with Adam. It's just things just happened. And I'm pretty glad to get on and not only write but also work with you all on air too. So it's good. I know we got a show to do. We got to get into the weeds of things. But yeah, it's been fun.
Yes,
and I appreciate the opportunity. And thanks to everybody who's been joining us because we've had tons of guests and good quality guests over the years, and it's been pretty fun talking to them.
And some bad ones, but we won't get into that.
We've had some technical disasters in the middle of interviews that you guys never noticed, but we were horribly embarrassed once or twice because of stuff like that.
But suffice to say, thanks to everybody who's been a part of the Hog Sty, big or small. And, wow, you guys really went deep with that. I was thinking more like off-season thoughts about the team or anything. You guys
I was ready. I was ready for that, too. I was just going to – I would have got into it, but, we're past that now. I think we wasted our 3 minutes on the sentimental stuff.
On the kumbaya.
Yeah. I was in an unusually sentimental mood.
Right. And now let me tell you why you guys all suck.
I just save that for our written commenters on the site. They do suck.
All right, well, let's do this then. We have the Eagles coming up on Sunday. It is the momentous moment of the first game of the season. Did anybody, Alex, remind me, did anybody predict a win?
No, we had a clean sleep.
We haven't
sweep
heard
of
Jamal's
losses
prediction.
Here. Oh, that's true.
So I guess we
You know what? Why don't we
say?
say? Yeah, let's save it. Yeah, because
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we've heard the roster. We're getting ready for the Eagles. We all called this as a loss. What are the big things you guys are thinking of, sort of in terms of what to watch out for? Any key matchups? What's the big picture headline story leading into this game?
So the big picture headline to me, Carson Wentz is back, more or less healthy. They have a new running back, Jordan Howard, who came from the Bears. But the running game really isn't their thing. For them, it's really the passing game, and Wentz is a good quarterback. But I did do a little bit of research into how Wentz's training camp went, and he was a little shaky in some areas. His completion percentage was a little off. Threw more interceptions than he usually would. Stayed in the pocket more. Didn't scramble as much. So it makes me wonder if that back issue that he had. Because remember he was out for a back issue.
Yeah, he's been hurt a lot.
Well, he's injury prone. I mean, what can you say? I mean, he's injury prone.
A full season.
Yeah, but so it makes me wonder, how sharp he's really going to be. But the big issue here's what I think. I guess we're doing Eagles
He's
offense.
Be sharp, Steve.
Eagles offense, I guess.
Yeah,
so,
let's start there.
Alshon Jeffrey, Zach Ertz, Deshaun Jackson. That's downright freaking frightening to me.
They're all Redskins killers.
I mean, you can add Nelson Aguilar into that conversation because I would argue he's probably better than our best receiver. Still.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to leave him out. Nelson Aguilar is actually Wentz's favorite target. So those three guys, and so I think what you have to do here, especially if Wentz isn't mobile as much as he was, and again, that's just a little bit I saw, and who knows how true that is. So I think you got to get pressure up the middle from the defensive line. You have to shade coverage to Deshaun Jackson. You have to. I'm not saying you have to double team him in every play, but you have to shade.
You have to keep the Monte Nicholson
because there's nobody on the field for the Redskins that can keep up with him. Nobody, and so that's frightening. And so I think you got to get pressure Wentz right up the middle. Take away the deep ball and dare him to beat you on the dink and dunk game. I think that's how you have to play it.
I mean, I think you're right on with that kind of general plan. The hard part is he's got 4 really good targets, and there's just no way you're going to be able to cover 4 really good targets all game long. That's not possible. So you have to kind of go into this expecting that they'll get theirs. And I really think that the other part of the defensive plan has to be you got to take a bend but don't break approach to this offense. They're going to get into the field goal range, into the 20-yard line area. That's when you got to clamp down because that's when those windows will get smaller with this offense. And I think if you can make sure they're coming away with field goals, not touchdowns on their drives. That's your best chance at winning here. Now, I don't think you have a very good chance of winning. This is a team that a lot of folks are saying could go to the Super Bowl this year,
right?
In the Eagles.
Well, the good thing for this defense, though, when you're talking about containing or trying to contain the Philly's offense, you have essentially 3 rushers in Ioannidis, Payne, and Allen who can get to the quarterback themselves. Like with them 3, and what that does for you, and you can add a rusher, you can add a Kerrigan or a Montez Sweat, but what that does for the defense, it allows the 8 in coverage, and when you have the 8 in coverage, doesn't matter if Carson Wentz has all day, you're not going to give up the big play. You're going to force Carson Wentz to make the right throw and be accurate, but the thing is, how accurate is he going to be if you have 3 good pass rushers who can collapse the pocket by themselves? How accurate can Carson Wentz be? And I don't necessarily know which angle they're going to take in that being rushing 4 or rushing 5 and trying to get the ball out of his hands quick, or maybe sitting back. and rushing just 3 or rushing 4. I don't know what the Redskins are going to do, but I feel like if they're gonna try and contain this offense, they need to go ahead and just sit back and make sure they have enough people in coverage, because you have people on multiple levels. You're not going to have Ertz. Ertz is going to beat any linebacker we put on him. And you got to hope Landon Collins can contain him. But if you put Landon Collins on Ertz, then who's going to cover Deshaun Jackson down the field? And he's faster than any cornerback we have. And you're going to have to leave. You're eventually going to leave either Deshaun Jackson or Alshon Jeffrey one-on-one. And that's going to be a problem. So with that being said, you need to stay in zone. I think they need to rush 3 and allow those linemen to get there. But yeah, it's going to be a challenge.
Keep in mind, though, the Eagles have, I think, 4 Pro Bowlers on that offensive line of theirs.
Jason Peters, Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson. Lane Johnson's a bit of a loudmouth, but I mean, that's Brandon Brooks. Right guard. Talented. All these guys have talent.
I say the Skins got dogs too, so they just gotta figure out to make it work.
No, it's gonna be a fun matchup to watch. Is our D line versus that offensive line? I just think
that no matter what happens, you just can't ever leave Deshaun Jackson one-on-one. I mean, you just can't. No. You can't do that. I'd rather, if you have to leave somebody, I guess it has to be Ertz. At least it's underneath. But I got to correct myself, by the way. I mean, clearly Ertz, is the favorite target. Okay, I mean he had 116 targets.
You were talking wide receiver targets.
Well, what I was talking about was the count of the balls that Carson Wentz threw in training camp. That's what I was talking about. But yeah, last year obviously Zach Ertz, was the most productive tight end.
I mean,
in football.
I almost think he's underrated as a tight end. He's very good.
I think he might be, him and Travis Kelce are probably the top 2 tight ends in football now that Gronk is gone and Jordan Reed is never on the field. So I think it's really those 2 guys.
You might be right.
But listen, I mean, Joel has it right. You have to keep as many guys in coverage as possible. Right. This team isn't going to run on you. At least if they do, I'd let them, and see what happens.
They'll get 75, maybe even to 100 if you let them. But
oddly enough, for all the offensive firepower, like last year, they were only 18th in points, which is fair to middling. He had a ton of passing yards, but not a lot of points. And the reason is red zone. They were mediocre in the red zone. And I'll tell you the other thing, in my brief analysis of Carson Wentz's training camp, he's missed a lot of deep balls. Missed a lot of deep balls. And so, again,
that's surprising.
Try to take that away. Let them dink and dunk, down the field with Zach Ertz and take your chances and hope the defense can come through and stop enough of them that it'll, let our offense do something. I think that's
right.
The game
Maybe, hopefully, you get lucky with the turnover or 2.
Well, here's the thing, too. We're in Game 6 of Carson Wentz versus the Redskins. This will be Game 6 for him. I mean, of all the teams that Carson Wentz played so far in his career, we've sacked him the most. We've gotten to him the most. Sacked him 14 times in 5 games. And I think the next closest team is like at 10 sacks. Obviously, the first game that we played him against in his rookie year, that was something in itself. I think he got sacked, I want to say maybe 6 times.
5
times, but you still have so many. You got 4 other games where he's got sacked plenty of times, at least twice a game, and you're getting to the quarterback by itself, and you don't even have the defensive line that you had, or the complete defensive line back then that you have now. So you're going in at full strength, game 1 on the road, but at the same time you have an opportunity to go against Carson Wentz, who has a tendency to hold the ball a little bit longer. You'll have opportunities to get to the quarterback. You have to make plays, and you have to try and go for the ball and force some turnovers. And I think they'll have those opportunities. It's just whether or not, I mean, we all know, it's just whether or not they can, make it happen and convert them.
So let's talk a little bit about Carson Wentz in terms of numbers and what he's put up. He's only a career 63.7% completion percentage guy, but almost 70% last year in the 11 games he played. Took a dramatic step forward in that regard. Quarterback rating, he's a career 92 quarterback, 92.5, but that's brought down a lot by his rookie year. He's been over 100 for the past 2 years. So, I mean, for anybody who thinks that Carson Wentz is not legit, he is. He's a very, very talented quarterback. And I'm just kind of hoping that what I'm reading about his training camp was accurate and not complete, hooey. And maybe he starts slow, and maybe we can catch this team a bit flat-footed.
That really is kind of the hope the Redskins have is, the Eagles come into this thing thinking, oh, it's going to be an easy win. We don't need Carson to do too much. We don't need anyone to, ball out to get this thing.
Of course, the Redskins are the queens of flat-footedness, too.
Right.
And I said queens intentionally.
Yeah, well said. All right, fair enough. And I can't really add anything to all of that. I mean, you're asking a lot for the defensive line guys to get penetration on this one, get to Carson Wentz. I know that's going to be key, but you're asking a lot. Brandon Brooks is a Pro Bowl guy. I mean, Jason Peters is. This is a tough job.
Jason Peters is probably going in the Hall of Fame.
We could not get a tougher test right up.
And it's in the city of hate on top of that, which never goes well for us. Listen, you guys know how I feel about the city of Philadelphia. It needs to become, Gomorrah.
It really deserves that nickname, man. I'm surprised that hasn't kind of.
It hasn't caught on. I'm really just trying to, insult John Worrell more than anything else by, keep saying it.
He lives in Gettysburg.
But I think he didn't talk to me for 2 months one time because I made too much fun of the city of Philadelphia.
Jesus. All right, well let's switch focus then a little bit here. Unless you guys have any other lingering thoughts about Philly's offense and our defense.
The only thing I would say to sum it up is that I think Deshaun Jackson is just vindictive enough that he's going to want to have a big game. I think he's still probably a bit sore, and he's that kind of guy, and so I think he's going to do everything he can to make the Redskins look silly. So I think that's the key. I think beyond blitzing Carson Wentz, you got to stop Deshaun Jackson. I think that's the key.
Well,
yeah.
Sorry about that. I was going to say, yes, Deshaun Jackson is a big factor for the most part. But you do not want to get death by 1,000 paper cuts either. It's a lot, man. They got Alshon, they have Zach Ertz, who's going to do a lot. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they match up against these guys and how they game plan against them. But yeah, Deshaun Jackson is definitely the one who can take the top off any defense, and we know how that was for 2 years or 3 years, really.
Yeah. You look at that Eagles receiving core, and how could you not be envious as a Redskin fan? It's built the exact opposite of how we've been built the last few years.
We've got a totally unproven receiving core. I don't have any idea what to expect from these guys, and neither does anybody else.
Yeah, with the release of Doctson, the average just went way up.
The hope went way up. I don't know about the average.
Yeah, something like that.
If Doctson had not been a first-round pick, he'd been okay. The problem really wasn't that he sucked. The problem was that he couldn't possibly live up to his draft status.
You drafted a Leonard Hankerson in the first round, is what you did.
I don't even think he was even as good as Leonard Hankerson.
Well,
but if he'd been a fifth-round pick, sure, he might have stuck around.
Right.
That is fair.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, let's switch over then. The worst thing about the Eagles is they are so tough. In addition to having amazing positional players, they are so tough in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Let's talk about Redskins' high-flying, high-scoring offense, right? Against Philly's not overrated defense. We'll go with that as the headline, right?
Am I the only one that's literally had nightmares about Fletcher Cox going up against Donald Penn and Eric Flowers on the left side?
I would say no, because yeah. Here's the thing, man. If the Eagles put Fletcher Cox at any point against the right side of our line, they should just fire their defensive coordinator. I would just sit him in between Penn and Flowers and say, just have fun,
Eric has his moments. He's had moments. Was it the Bengals game? I think it was the Bengals game. He looked pretty good. He wasn't a complete disaster. His problem is that he's so wildly inconsistent that you're going to have, stretches where it's just like Olay defense, all over and over and over again. And then every once in a while he'll come through with a decent rep. That's his problem.
Usually in a run block too. He seems to have run blocking down much better than pass blocking.
For sure. But look, in terms of the Redskins offense, it's kind of weird, man, because we don't really know what to expect. We have a new quarterback. I didn't think Case Keenum looked all that great in the preseason, particularly. But all these new wide receivers, who the heck knows how any of them are going to do? I think really and truly, this team, more so than other years, is going to be a run team. They're going to have to rely on and hope and pray that Darius Geis is everything that we think he is.
Right.
And, that's just going to have to drive the bus for a while until this passing offense kind of gets their sea legs underneath them, I think.
Yeah. Well, and unfortunately, this isn't the week to really see what happens.
It's what it is, man.
I say they're not going to get their sea legs under them for maybe 2020. That's how long we're looking for this stuff. But the good thing is, Jay Gruden does maximize. Like he plays to the strengths, or what I should say, tendencies. It's not tendencies. I can't find the word for it right now, but essentially, he does a lot of play action, and he makes sure to utilize enough blockers that he has to. I do remember this one drive in preseason where Dwayne Haskins, he was dealing with a bad offensive line. I don't know the lineup from left to right off the top of my head. However, there was a play. I think it was against the Atlanta Falcons or the Cincinnati Bengals. It was a couple times where they ran play action, and they literally left all five. Excuse me, I said all five. The linemen and the tight ends into block, and I believe the running back as well. But it just so happened that the defense was only rushing 3, so it didn't really go to their benefit. But at the same time, that's what they're doing. They do have moments of max protection. I think that's what you're going to get when you go against Philly as well. You're going to have to keep an extra guy in, either as a running back or a tight end. But they'll have to do it.
Yeah.
And they even acknowledged it in the offseason. Like, this is something that they're going to have to do without Trent Williams there.
Yeah. By the way, I mean, I realize that Jordan Reed is on his 167th concussion or whatever the number is, but the rumor has it that he might be back. I know we just talked at the beginning of the show about the concussion protocol and everything, but some of the beat writers are saying that he might be back. And,
right.
If that's the case, I mean, the offense can and should run through Jordan Reed, but I'd also like to point out, has anybody bothered to look and check to see who is the Eagles starting outside linebacker?
Yeah, it's Brown.
It's Zach Brown. And does anybody actually think that Zach Brown has a prayer in hell of actually covering Jordan Reed?
If Jordan Reed's 100%, no. But
yeah, if he's
knowing
there.
Zach Brown, somehow it would happen. Cause,
who knows? But the point is, I think if Jordan Reed is in and playing, this whole thing changes. Because Jay has been very clear for years, and it's been obvious, the offense runs through Jordan Reed.
Yeah.
And so if Reed is in, you're going to get Geis and Reed, and those two guys are going to drive the offense. So just hope and
interesting, to kind of look at the Eagles, as good as their front four are with their defense, and it's really just Fletcher Cox, and you put some decent guys around them.
Brandon Graham is talented. Yeah. Malik Jackson is talented.
Right. But it runs through Fletcher Cox on that line, without a doubt. Their linebacking core and their corners, nothing really scares you there. I mean, Malcolm Jenkins, who's what is he, a free safety or a strong safety? Really, he's kind of the only other guy that concerns you.
I think he's more of a name than anything, to be perfectly honest with you, in my opinion.
Well, he's been to a couple Pro Bowls. He's the only talent I really see back there. So, you can pass against this team if you have targets.
He's also 31 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to minimize their defense, necessarily. I mean, last year, different guys, they were in the middle of the pack in most rankings, if you want, everybody wants to know. They were terrible in third down. Wait, that's wrong column.
No, you were looking at us again, weren't you?
Yeah, I did. I was looking at us. But the Eagles were fair to Midland in most categories,
Right.
They were decent in points, but they were in the 20s in yardage. Rushing yards per attempt. Teams rushed against them.
They were a 9-17 last year.
The one thing they were really, really, really good at was red zone defense. Number one in the league.
What's important to note about the Eagles defense? It's kind of actually similar to. It's actually kind of similar to the Redskins' offense of last year. They were depleted defensively. And it kind of it hurt them to a point where, I mean, even up until the Rams game last year when they pulled off the upset and they got on the little hot streak. Outside of that, well, even before that, they were dealing with the same players, but something just got into them with Jim Schwartz and how he coached these guys up, and that's a credit to them and how they played. But at the same time, these guys were depleted, and it kind of butchered their numbers for the most part of the season. So with that being said, I just feel like when it comes to the Eagles defense, this is a brand new year. They have a little bit more. They had a lot more time to get healthy and get into the game plan, or the scheme of what Schwartz was trying to run, and that's going to play a big factor week one. They'll be much more sound, or they should be much more sound, especially with the health coming back. And the same thing for us as well. Like, we'll have a good test, and so will they.
Yeah, fair enough. It's just not a good matchup. I think that's the key to this one. It's a pretty fierce defensive front against a very weak offensive line. Yes, maybe their backfield's susceptible, but it might not matter if Case Keenum has no time and the young, inexperienced receivers can't get it going. So it's just not a good matchup, and it's a very bad matchup for week one for this team.
And by the way, if anybody has not listened to D'Angelo Hall's podcast this week with Aaron Hawksworth, definitely worth a listen. Speaking of Trent Williams is what reason why I thought about it. D'Angelo has kind of become Trent's unofficial mouthpiece, so it seems. And D. Hall gave the distinct impression that Trent's going to be back at some point. And he used the word sooner rather than later. Trent will be back. It won't be this week, but we may see a Trent Williams sighting here in the next couple of weeks.
I hope so. It would be great to have him back by week 2, but I'm not going to count on anything.
Yeah. I love D. Hall, but I don't really trust things he says in the media.
Fair enough. I mean, it is. You have that right. I mean, I'm just telling you what he said. You can believe it or not believe it.
Yeah. Should we do predictions or?
Well, we gotta before we get to that. Special teams, okay? We're seeing last year. We have to because
it's
last year, Greg Stroman was the worst punt returner in the history of football. Last year
somehow worse than a few years before that when we were like the worst special teams in the history of football.
To never return punts ever again.
No,
and our kick return game was basically a total 0-2. I believe it was Byron Marshall. Last year.
Yeah.
This year. The depth chart reads Sims, kick returner, Trey Quinn, punt returner. Personally, I think you might want to have Sims do both of it because I don't really trust Trey Quinn, at punt returner particularly. But we'll see. Hopefully, though, those two guys can make this team be something other than 32nd and last.
We did see something from Sims in that preseason game.
Absolutely.
I think he had 2 returns around to the 40.
Yeah,
and we're so used to seeing kick returns get pulled out to the 15-yard line, which, if you guys don't understand, anything behind the 25, you shouldn't have returned it to begin with.
Yeah, and by the way, we didn't mention Wendell Smallwood at all, who's the guy the Redskins brought in from the Eagles. He's the second team kick returner for what it's worth, but I don't know if Smallwood will be of much help in terms of tattling on the Eagles or not, but. I think he's better than Byron Marshall, if nothing else.
They gotta figure those numbers out because there's no telling who's going to be active come Sunday with all these special. They consider these guys primarily special teams guys.
Right.
I'm sorry I couldn't spit it out. So it just depends on who they want active come Sunday. And I think Steven Sims is probably going to be their guy.
Yeah, I think so. You're probably
over Wendell.
We need to find a good returner.
Over Wendell Smallwood, yeah. And one of these receivers we're all hot about is going to sit. There's no way they're going to keep 6 receivers up on the 45 for game day. So one of these guys we were anxious to see is going to sit. Robert Davis or Kelvin Harmon, one of the two of those.
I think that what I've seen on social media is that Harmon's the most likely to be on the bench.
So he's the rookie. Davis is coming back. Most likely, yeah.
All right, awesome. Let's do predictions.
All right.
Jamal, do you want to start us off since you didn't?
Jamal has to start.
Yeah, and technically, you guys already did your predictions, so it's really on me, ain't it?
Yeah, that's true.
We didn't do score or anything like that.
Okay, all right. So, I think that the Skins lose. Shocker, but I do think that they surprise people in a good way because. some people think that it's not going to be competitive because of how the offense is projected to look. And these projections kind of build up in their head for months and months at a time because you haven't seen them play real football yet. You only seen them play preseason. And these type of projections just continue to grow in your head. And when I say that, I think that the Redskins put on an impressive outing. They lose, but it's not as bad as people think. And with that being said, I think that they lose around 24-20, 21-17-ish. So I'll say 24-20 just to make it official.
Okay. I predicted a loss, last week when we did our game predictions. I'm not going to change that. My hope, just don't look awful. Is that too much to ask? It really shouldn't be too much to ask. Don't look like you don't belong on an NFL field, because we've seen this time and time and time again with Jay Gruden and his teams for week 1. Last year they won, but it was because they played the god-awful Cardinals. Every other year of Jay Gruden's tenure, basically, this team has looked atrocious. Like they weren't ready, like they weren't prepared, like they didn't want to be there.
Too many penalties.
Really sloppy, all of that. So, I just hope against hope that they look like a legitimate NFL team. But I have a hard time predicting it just because of the tide of history, So I'm going to – I think Jamal's on the right track for the Eagles score, mid to high 20s. I'll say 27 10 Eagles. Hopefully I'm wrong.
I think this is actually going to be a sloppier, lower-scoring game. First game of the season. I think both these teams are kind of coming off of bad years to begin with last year, or off years, with health and other issues like that. So I'm going to say it's actually fairly low-scoring. I'm going something like 18-14.
18-14.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I'm kind of with Jamal. I think the Redskins are going to put up a fight, but I think that fight's going to be on the defensive side, not the offensive side. I'm going to say the Redskins put up 10 points, pound one out on the ground, and get a field goal. And the Eagles call it 21. So 21-10 Eagles.
Okay.
So that's it. It's all written in stone now. There's no going back, no takesies-backsies. The game.
Hold on, I'm recording this on stone? What?
Yeah.
No takesies-backsies,
Alex. You heard.
All right.
Awesome. Cool. Well, that is episode 1, at least preview episode 1 for the season. How you guys feel? God darn, it feels good to be back in the saddle. Am I right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's like we never left.
It's like we've been doing shows the entire off season. No, this is for those of you, the peek behind the curtain, this is much more fun than dreaming up topics, every week. Talking about actual football and actual games is really what we live for. It's why we started the site in the first place. Yes. Was to do this, and it's much more fun than like, oh my God, we've got the 30th in a row position group breakdown. That's no fun. This is what it's all about, and so I'm definitely excited that football's back, even if the Redskins suck.
Amen. Amen to that. Beautiful final words then for the episode. We'll leave it at that. BigHeadsMedia.com, TheHogSty.com. Keep checking back, and we will see you guys after the game. Take care.
Later.
Good.